Welcome to Let's Talk Resilience, a podcast crafted by youth for youth as a vital part of the Global Youth Summit Bridging Program hosted by Group 1. Join us on an enlightening journey to unravel the intricacies of building resilience in the post-COVID-19 era. I'm your co-host Pranav, and today we're going to embark on a profound exploration of a topic that lies at the heart of resilience: the development and sustainable growth of local communities. Now, before we dive in, let's establish a clear foundation. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back from challenges, it's about thriving despite them. In the context of our theme, building resilience means equipping communities with the tools, strategies, and mindset to not only withstand adversity, but also to flourish in the face of it. Now, our first focal point revolves around defining the core components of resilient communities. From fostering local leadership to nurturing economic diversity, we'll delve into the critical elements that form the backbone of community resilience. Moving on, we'll delve into the strategies that empower communities to achieve sustainable growth. We'll explore the significance of grassroots initiatives, the role of youth-led innovation, and the importance of collaborative partnerships that transcend boundaries. And finally, we're going to unravel the impact of sustainable community development on broader global issues. How do thriving local economies contribute to addressing pressing challenges such as climate change, poverty, and social inequality? We'll uncover the connections that underscore the far-reaching implications of resilient communities. Now, let's start off with our first point, right? What exactly is the core components of a resilient community? Malik, could you share some insights on this?
Thank you, Pranav. Okay, when it comes to building resilience in local communities, for me, two of the most important and main elements to guarantee that are infrastructure and services. When we talk about infrastructure, we're basically talking about roads, bridges, utilities, communication systems, etc. And when we talk about services, we're talking about healthcare, education, and even clean water. And I think these two elements are essential to guarantee that a community will be able to withstand whatever comes its way. Another element we can talk about is community engagement. It comes to no surprise to us that a community that is strong and that is bound together will be able to withstand anything. Other elements can be discussed about this, like economic diversity and stability. We could also talk about environmental sustainability and even governance and the government in general. What's your opinion on this, Pranav?
You raised up a pretty important part, right? Governance. That's something that across the world, people are starting to recognize that having a good and strong, reliable government would really shape the path of the country itself, right? It really makes a lot of changes in terms of the other core components, because everything else you just talked about, healthcare, education, and, all of these rely on the government actually providing certain resources. And without a good government, none of these things are actually made possible, right? So that's exactly why so many communities out there, so many countries, they're trying to reduce corruption within the government levels, right? They're trying to make sure they elect the right leaders. That actually plays a really key role because everything stems from the government itself. So I feel like we haven't been giving enough importance to that role of governments and how much actual change the rest of us can make if the government itself is not, supporting these extra initiatives that's happening on the side.
Well, I totally agree with you, Pranav, but the point you just raised makes me think about one element that I see is lacking in many countries and in many localities, is the issue of public-private sector partnerships. What I mean by that is basically the government working with the private sector in specific elements for them to share the risk of whatever they're working on. And to me, it's crucial in building resilience because it leverages the strength and resources of both sectors. And to me, in that element, I feel like the private sector has more local knowledge of the markets and the consumer behaviors and the dynamics of the community in general than the government. So I see it as a win-win and as an essential element that can be leveraged. So to me, public and private sector partnerships are essential for local communities to foster.
I completely agree with you, Malik. The whole idea of the private and the public having this partnership is exactly what we wanted to talk about in the next part, where we uncover strategies that empower communities to achieve sustainable growth. And we wanted to talk about grassroots initiatives, the role of youth-led innovation, and the importance of collaborative partnership, right? And this youth-led innovation, particularly something that I'm really interested in because, well, this is something where the private really comes into play, right? You're talking about the society, the youth within the society who understand the society better than most public servants out there. They are coming in to solve these issues that they see on a day-to-day basis, right? And at a much higher level, some countries do even have these collaborative partnerships where they work together with startups, right? These governments are actually opening up to the idea of working together with startups to solve certain issues that are out there in the society. And they're funding these startups either with grants or some kind of media support. And they're actually trying to work together so that the government takes a load off on what they need to do to solve these issues, and they move it towards the private sector, particularly startups who seem to be in a much more better position. They're a bit more flexible compared to these bigger conglomerates that are out there, and they're able to quickly solve and test out different solutions for the problems that are out there. What do you think about these?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, Pranav. We can see it nowadays that youth-led innovation is becoming more and more prominent when it comes to governmental strategies. And I think, we like it or not, that comes from the fact that there's a technological gap nowadays between our generation maybe and older generations. And as you know, nowadays, everything is based on technology and innovation. Innovation is the backbone of resilience, we like it or not. So the government finds itself in a position where they have no choice but to work with the youth because they're the ones that have been interacting with technology from the beginning. So another element that makes young people very valuable when it comes to governmental agencies and even NGOs is the very well-known fact that they tend to be outside the box thinkers and approach problems from various new angles that haven't been thought about earlier on. So what we could say about that is young people have fresh perspectives and might be seen as more creative. So obviously the last point I mentioned is kind of controversial, and some people think that the younger generation isn't necessarily more creative or has the ability to think outside the box more than the elderly. What do you think of it, Pranav?
Well, I do agree in the sense that the younger generation do tend to be a bit more creative. Well, they don't have the experience that the older generation has, so they do make a lot of mistakes, but they do tend to, and this is pretty much linked to our last point, they do tend to focus on the bigger picture. They focus on global issues, right? The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. They do tend to focus on these stuff like climate change, poverty, social inequality. They try to focus on these and not just what's happening within their society. So they tend to dream big. And I guess you could say that is a consequence of not having much experience, or, it's just the thing that comes with a young age. You tend to dream big. You want to achieve a lot of different things. And that kind of ambition, I feel, is really nice. It's really important for any country to have young people who are ambitious and they want to solve the bigger problems that are out there. not just within your communities, or rather, I see it this way. You got to solve what's inside your house first before you can go big and solve things on a country level, on a global level. So fixing those issues within your own homes, within your own communities, your own societies, that's step one. And having the aim to expand that to a global level, that's really important, because why stop at just a local level when you actually have the scale or even the capability or the resources to bring this global? And that could help a lot of different countries that are out there as well, right? Because not all countries have the same amount of resources or the same amount of development within their countries to actually have access to these kind of solutions. So when local solutions become global, when local economies are actually supporting these kind of startups, these kind of solutions, and they're actually being pushed out, right, into a global scale, that really benefits not just your own community, but it really expands on and helps other people in the world. And I feel that that's a really great movement that's happening. And you only see that in, the past 15 years or so, when globalization is becoming a really huge thing. Right. Before globalization, you don't really see much of this, because whatever that happens in your country stays in your country. You don't really care about bringing it out somewhere else. So what do you think about this?
Well, I totally agree with your point. Besides the fact that I do not necessarily think it was due to globalization, I'd say it was more an issue due to the rise of climate change and people being more active when it comes to fighting for gender equality and quality education, etc. I think young people were born in a time where things got really rough, and they didn't have the comfort of living in an environment where they had nothing to worry about. As far as it comes to me, I feel like since I was born, we've had the talk of basically climate change being a big threat to the world. So it allows us young people to be more aware of our surroundings and be more aware of the issues at hand and have more of a universal mindset, meaning that we are aware of the fact that the world itself is in danger, not just our local community or our country. And that's the main thing that allows Gen Z and millennials basically to have that mindset of being activists and working towards a better world. I wouldn't say it's exactly being an idealist or living in a utopia, but it's more of being aware of your surroundings and trying really hard to change things that you know are wrong, but older people are not necessarily realizing are wrong because they didn't face these issues during their times.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just to bring this to a close, this really nice discussion to a close, we've pretty much uncovered the essence of building resilient local communities for sustainable growth. Like, from defining resilience to exploring strategies and recognizing the global implications. We've traversed a spectrum of insights. And what do you think our listeners should take away from this episode?
I think fostering local leadership and empowering community-driven initiatives is an essential element that should be in the mind of everyone listening to us. I also think that embracing innovation is one of the main elements that can allow us to strive for a better world. As we discussed earlier, I think that forging partnerships that transcend the national boundaries are essential for collective impact.
All right. Yeah, there's definitely no doubt that our journey towards a more resilient future begins with the growth and fortitude of our local communities. So, thank you, listeners, for joining us on this enlightening episode of Let's Talk Resilience. Stay tuned as we continue our exploration of diverse facets of building resilience in the post-COVID era, featuring remarkable hosts from Group 1 of the Global Youth Summit. Until then, keep nurturing resilience and let your brilliance shine. Thank you.